Alright, it's been a long journey. My favorite films of the year. I'm so excited about this because I'm so tired of talking about these movies. I'm sure you're tired of listening to me talk about these movies. But this is it. We just gotta get through this one video. The difference between this one and the other categories I've been working on so far is that for this one, I'll be ranking each member of the list according to favoritism. For everything else, I've been taking my personal taste into account for sure, but I've also tried to objectively analyze each element as much as I can. Here, I feel more freedom to just go off of what impacted me the most personally, how I was emotionally affected, stuff like that. Because really, so much of your love of film depends on who you watch it with, how you're feeling at the time, what's going on to you that day. I think that's one of the best parts of film is that personal element. Otherwise, it's just science, which is so famously useless. But please enjoy this list, and if you have any problems with it, eat a Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. And if you want to put up your favorite movies of the year, that would be awesome as well. I love to see what kinds of film impact other people and how they express themselves. I love talking about this stuff, and finding just a few people to share this blessing with has been really, really nice. With that being said, here are my top 25 films of the year, coincidentally the nominees for the Best Picture prize. I'll start with a few honorable mentions. Y2K. This is the funniest movie of 2024. It's an underrated blast that left me rolling in the theater. It had some hilarious supporting performances, and it played against the coming-of-age genre with an air of reverence instead of that tired, ironic spin. I may have had some issues with the technicals that made it difficult to include it in the main list, but as far as party films go, I think it's a certified hit. Dee Dee. What I loved about this story was that it wasn't afraid to portray its main character as unlikable at times, because, let's be honest, we're all pretty unlikable as children from time to time. A film that accepts that about the world opens the door from a writing standpoint to explore deeper connections and walk through complicated relationship dynamics. The storyline between the main kid and his mother was especially moving. Kneecap. Language as a means for revolution is a great way to contextualize a people and their struggle, showing the damage Britain has done in a post-Troubles landscape. These characters work like firecrackers, their energy frantic and bubbling. Most importantly, the film allows them to be as angry as they should be, given the circumstances of Northern Ireland. All love to Michael Fassbender as well. The harsh reality of indie film is that you need a star to draw attention, and him showing up for the 10 minutes he does allows this film to be seen by a wider audience. The Room Next Door. It's impossible for Pedro Almodovar to make a bad movie, I think, just by the nature of his observations. He develops a world that's so authentic to him, I can't help but admire his vision, even if this isn't one of my favorites. It has two great performances by two of the great actresses working today as well, so for that alone, it demands your attention. Trap. This is a kind of lightning-in-a-bottle film where the right actor found the right director at the right time. Josh Hartnett works perfectly within the world of M. Night Shyamalan, and he creates a character you can't take your eyes off of. It's a great thriller if you're looking for a good time, one you can enjoy after a long day's work. I'll admit that I'm partial towards Shyamalan. I became a film fan during his death stretch, and I never could have imagined a director coming back from that. Nowadays, I think it's best to defend our auteurs even if they're not the most critically successful. A Better Man. I mean, the man is a monkey. Literally, I cannot think of a better idea. Robbie Williams? Who gives a shit? You make him a monkey. Well, that's a whole nother story entirely. Saturday Night. As a fan of the show growing up, and as someone with a reverence for its impact on the overall comedy landscape, I came into this film hoping to appreciate it. I enjoyed the fast-paced editing, the lovable performances, and the high-tension storytelling. It's a good decision to set the story when they did. I think it's possible they took the whole thing a little too seriously, though. Megalopolis. I actually thought this film was terrible. Atrocious, really. I thought I would enjoy it more in an ironic way, but I couldn't even bring myself to that. I love so much that it exists though, just the fact that it's real is enough for it to be here. Not every film has to be good to have a positive impact, and the way the film-watching world took hold of this movie and let it fly was such a blast to be a part of. But yeah, it's truly awful, just astonishingly bad. Worse than you even think it is. Now that we've had a few appetizers, it's on to the main course. I'm not sure if these are the best films of the year, but they are my favorites. These are films that changed me in some way, shape, or form, and helped me develop a more specific perspective on the world. Now we'll actually start with the nominees. Number 25. I'm Still Here. I had been going into the film expecting it to be about a singular performance, but I was pleasantly surprised to see how fleshed out the family dynamic was here. Each performance and character were interesting in their own right, and the film never over-dramatized certain scenarios, which made them more interesting. Fernando Torres was the best part of it, and the film has a natural advantage of taking place on the beaches of Rio de Janeiro, so of course it was beautiful. I do wish the film took more advantage of its wonderful landscape though, and there were times where I was hoping they would take a stronger stance on the situation going on. For those reasons, I can't put it higher on the list, but as an emotionally powerful family drama, it does its job more than well. Number 24. A Real Pain. When people think of this film, the attention of it pretty much goes in the direction of Kieran Culkin's character. I think that's an apt description, and while I didn't think the film was revolutionary by any technical standards, its ability to quantify this character dynamic so beautifully is what forces it onto the list. Culkin's character forced me to look inward and to wonder whether I'm doing enough to put the world in check in my day-to-day life, and the struggle to find that balance is a gorgeous question to ask. He plays a person you admire as much as pity, but I wonder if living that way is the correct way to live, and I've just been doing it wrong this whole time. It's not just his performance, it's the writing of his character, and whenever I think about how much I check myself, I'll be thinking back to this film. Number 23. Honora. I'm not sure this is my favorite Sean Baker film, that would probably be Tangerine, but I can't deny he's got a fascinating eye for characters and he'll be around the block for quite a while. I love how much empathy he extends to his characters and how developed the world around his film is. You never know what direction he's going to take, and that makes him an exciting storyteller. Mikey Madison's obviously great here, and everything she does is brought in with incredible energy. I can't say I think about this movie as much as I was hoping I would be, but there are still many aspects of it that I enjoy, particularly the performances. Number 22. Hundreds of Beavers. As a huge fan of the silent era of storytelling, I have a great reverence for any film that treats the era with great reverence as well. The way this film plays with such creativity in the medium is a testament to the magic of filmmaking in that there are so many visual tricks going on you wonder how they were able to pull it all off. The area was beautiful and the way they utilized spacing in the landscape were next to none. As far as visuals go, it's difficult for me to claim this year any film was better than it. The only reason it's lower on the list is that the story didn't do anything too special, and I wish it would have been socially a little more progressive. I know it's an homage to the era, but there are some elements you could update a little bit. It's still an incredible experience though, and absolutely worth checking out. Number 21. Monkey Man. Even though it's a simple story, I don't necessarily think that makes it a bad one. In fact, I think it's perfect for what it's going for. Obviously, the action in this movie is just leagues ahead of what's been coming out nowadays, and its ability to continue for such a long amount of time while engaging its audience is a feat among itself. But beyond that, the thematic messaging it brings to the table, along with direction the story takes, makes it an alluring look at classism throughout the world, something which most action movies won't dare touch. Dev Patel's physical commitment to the character and the visuals doesn't go unnoticed. It makes me incredibly excited to see his next directorial effort. Number 20. The Apprentice. The character dynamic between Trump and Roy Cohn is explored in a way with more depth and sincerity than I ever thought possible in a biopic like this, and the performance of both Jeremy Strong and Sebastian Stan were among the most resonant of the entire year. The visual tone of the film gave my stomach a twist, and it encapsulated the inherent cruelty of American business practices with an attuned understanding. There are certain elements that hinder it though, specifically the structure of the story adhering too closely to basic biopic plotlines that dull the original message. Despite that, it's still one of the most telling projects to chronicle the current political landscape, and its direction is next to none. Number 19. The Substance. The Substance was a vivid, pulse-pounding B-movie with its foot on the gas, containing brilliant performances by both Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley, respectively. Its messaging was powerful enough to shift the cultural zeitgeist, and while I'm not sure if it had the intellectually poignant approach that some people thought it had, it's clearly what turned this film from a blast to something stronger. The technical aspects like the makeup and costume design are already iconic, and it was able to show off a visual style that can't help but be applauded. Now, there's a very real possibility that this film should be higher up on my list, but I have to be upfront. When I watched this movie, I was very intoxicated, and I watched it at 2 a.m. I didn't finish it at 2 a.m., I started it at 2 a.m. The movie deserves more, but I was in such a hurry to catch up with the other films that I didn't have time to go back and see one I've already seen. That just speaks to the nature of this list though. We come to these stories at different parts in our lives. The film is both the film and what we bring to it. That night, what I brought to the substance was 7 shots of Jameson. I'd love to check it out with a more sober mentality. Number 18. Nosferatu. When I think of Nosferatu, there's a few elements that almost immediately come to mind. The sound design, the makeup, Bill Skarsgård, Lily Rose Depp, and the feminist twist on the story. Each of these are among the most excellent examples in their respective areas in the given year, and they're certainly what I take with me. There are so many technical things the film pulls off as well, and the way Eggers pulls off these effects should be a textbook for many aspiring filmmakers. There are some parts to the writing I felt could have been stronger, but the way Lily Rose Depp's character was approached and executed gives the film a layer that cannot be overstated. She turns the film from really good to can't miss. Number 17. My Old Ass. When I watched this movie, I had just returned from living in Korea for 6 months, and many of the questions I had postponed in my life had been thrown back in my face like a pot of boiling water. I was in a crisis, as you all would expect, because a 25-year-old doesn't just make a YouTube channel unless they're in some sort of crisis. Even though the film's about a teenage girl moving on to college, it faced a lot of similar questions that I had been asking myself for the last couple of days. How do I live in a way that makes my future self proud? What's my duty to my family and to myself? The movie didn't exactly solve these problems for me, but it offered me comfort in that I felt I wasn't alone. I cried at the end of this movie really hard. I'm almost glad I didn't go with anyone because I have difficulty showing my emotions in front of other people. Number 16. Baby Girl. Nicole Kidman's one of my favorite performers. I think she brings a dynamic to a film that can't be replicated by anyone else. It sets the tone for this movie brilliantly, and while there's many things about this story I enjoy, at the end of the day, the dynamic between her and Harris Dickinson is what I'm gonna take with me. These characters had a chemistry that I might claim is the best of the year because I feel like I could watch this film 100 times and still come up with different discoveries about their interactions. Antonio Banderas was also an underrated support. A particular scene with the 3 of these guys together has got to be one of my favorites of the year. It's one I'll come back to for character writing. Number 15. Sing Sing. Coleman Domingo has always been one of my favorite actors, ever since I saw him in Zola a few years ago. Man, what a career he's taken though, and I'm so glad he's receiving the respect he deserves. It's this film though, and his performance that take the cake as far as his filmography is concerned. He's just on another level here. I think in many pieces of media about prisoners, they water down the character's struggle to their confinement, whereas this film treats these people with a humanity that's not typically afforded. The cinematography was wonderful at exploring the existential nature of their lives, and it's got a genuine curiosity that struck me. The choice to use people from the actual program they were trying to depict gave the whole story an added layer of authenticity as well. Number 14. Exhibiting Forgiveness. Remember what I said about Michael Fassbender showing up for Kneecap? Well, when you look at the way this film was received, I imagine if it contained a box office draw, the world would have been treating it very differently. There are so many technical aspects here that I respect, but also from a writing standpoint, it's one of the best at exploring character dynamics as well. Family drama is one of my favorite genres to explore because it feels like such a meaty and epic source that can span years of conflict. Each relationship is approached with enormous care, and the performances carry such emotional weight I feel like it's impossible to come away from this film empty-handed. It's got something for everyone, whichever facet of film you enjoy. I guess it doesn't have a lot of comedy though, so if you're looking for that, you might be in the wrong spot. Number 13. The Seed of the Sacred Fig. I was lucky enough to have an Iranian professor for one of my creative writing classes in college who often took time to talk about the current events going on over there. While there's so much I don't know about the hijab protests, it was wonderful to come into this movie with some amount of background knowledge in mind, and it reminded me of fond memories in the classroom. Iranian cinema is among my favorite, if not my absolute favorite in the cinematic ecosystem, with so many great stories over the last 20 years especially. This film was great at exploring how feminism pushes against the bounds of the government and how scary it can be to enact change within your own family. The story never feels like it moves in an artificial progression, and the ending of it is where it's at its strongest. Number 12. Evil Does Not Exist. The first film I saw of Ryusuke Hamaguchi, and the only film I've seen of his up to Evil Does Not Exist, is called Drive My Car, a movie that came out just a few years ago. That movie is probably in my top 5 of all time. It's a film that contains more depth every time I watch it. It's a film that's brilliant on so many levels I want to puke. To see him follow it up is something I can be safe to say I was very excited for. What I love about this film is how radically different it is from the previous, where Drive My Car was this epic 3-hour affair. Evil Does Not Exist is a much smaller, streamlined production. Its direction gave Hamaguchi ample creative fluency, and while you can still see many of the same tendencies, it's a refreshing story that tells me he still has more to say. I may not have enjoyed this movie as much as Drive My Car, but I can't claim it's any worse than. I'm also curious to see directors experimenting with higher frame rates. I'll have to keep a note of that in the future. Number 11. A Different Man. Sebastian Stan is having one hell of a year, man. From where I thought his talent level was to where I see it now is probably the biggest difference in ability I've seen in a long time. The filming techniques are off the charts good, and the conflict kind of subverts the expectations of the typical different than storyline in a way that better encapsulates the issue. It's also hilarious, much more looking back at the film than it was while I was watching it. Sometimes a film is grainy in a way that feels like a tack-on, but here it gave a great addition to the final product. The cinematography was a bit of an ode to 70s era filmography, which happens to be my favorite era of film. Adam Pearson was also beloved in the role he had, his character being a perfect foil for Sebastian Stan. Number 10. Look Back. It was probably a year or two ago by now when I really dug into Fujimoto's work with Chainsaw Man, and I was shocked by how savvy, intelligent, and emotional his storytelling capabilities were. I had originally roped it together with Jujutsu Kaisen as the new wave of shonen manga, and because of my slight disappointment in that one, in my head I'd given Chainsaw Man the same ceiling. It wasn't until I got through part 1 when I realized I was reading one of my favorite mangas of all time, albeit from a basic manga fan. That's all to mention my expectations were blown away once by him, so it's even more surprising to get them blown away again. It's a small story, but at the same time it has the emotional power of a far grander tale. The way it interweaves with the real-life tragedy of the Kyoto Animation arson attack is a perfect memorial to the devastation it caused, where something like this could so easily be disrespectful if handled improperly. Number 9. The Brutalist. This movie, I had thought, was going to end up much higher on my list, but it just went through controversy after controversy that I just found difficult to avoid. There's something to be said about sticking to your guns, but at the same time, there are many legitimate points brought up against this film that are difficult to deny. The AI thing is particularly heartbreaking, especially with how little it's used in the film. It's become clear through research it had a very small impact on it, but at the same time, what kind of precedent would that create to give it a pass? Also, it royally pissed me off that I'd basically finished making everything about this award series before I knew that about the film. I mean, what the hell? So much of the show would have been different, possibly. To tell you the truth, it's hard to know what to do with this film. My original feelings were passionately positive. It does many things brilliantly well. And the historical epic is probably my favorite genre of storytelling, bar none, so it's like I was manufactured to like this movie. Probably, as time goes on, I'll look at it with less favor. For now, I'll leave it at 9. Number 8. All We Imagine Is Light. All We Imagine Is Light is a film that stuck with me more than I expected it to, and it's the film that's probably risen on my list the furthest as time has gone on. I'm seriously impressed with the story structure. It's like an onion, you know, because it has layers. The 3 leading women are all pivotal, bringing an intriguing dynamic with great quiet chemistry. I've also not seen a film in so long that places as much heart into the setting, and its foundation oozes into the characters in a way that makes me so jealous of its talents. Pael Kapadia has only made one other film up to this point, a documentary it looks like, called A Night of Knowing Nothing. Her other work should be more than worth checking out. Number 7. Nickel Boys. I watched this movie late into making this video, so there's some recency bias to consider, but I'm highly confident this will be a film that ages with grace over the next 10 years or so. It's entirely shot in the first person, as many people already know, so I thought I had a grip on the kind of style they were going for. I'm not opposed to gimmicks. I actually think they're a crucial element in pushing the boundaries of what film can accomplish. The experimentation can excite me even though it still relies on execution. To claim this film as a gimmick, though, feels disingenuous to what it ended up being. It was breathtaking at capturing memory, the fogginess in which you experience it, and the complicated relationship your mind has to it. The nostalgia, the trauma, the sensory overload, specifically the sensory overload. When you remember something, it feels like you mostly pick up on how you felt at the time. It's not what happened, it's your reaction to what happened. My original thought when this finished was that it had the immaculate cinematography of a modern Terrence Malick, but this film actually had a strong story to be compatible with it. In a way, this movie made me appreciate more what Malick was attempting to do, which is funny, I guess. Number 6. La Chimera. Loving Josh O'Connor feels like such an easy thing to do, especially when he picks such great projects to be a part of. I also get jealous when people just start speaking a different language as if they're nearly fluent. Like, damn, I didn't realize how far behind I was. Especially Italian. Italian is such a sick-ass language. But on a more serious note, I think this is one of the most heartwarming, gentle, and intelligent movies I've ever seen. It finds a way of digging to the bone of issues like many European cultures are capable of, specifically how to love. It's romantic in all the right ways, and it presents the story so that you feel like you've only just peeked into these characters' lives. It's immensely creative in a way that doesn't feel like it comes about by budget constraints, but more like an attachment to a childlike way of gripping the world. It acknowledges the natural state of the suffering mind without succumbing to it. I also enjoy its relationship to grave digging and attaching these existential issues into archaeological concepts. It's a unique window for exploring the questions they have to ask. Number 5. Dune Part 2. As a lover of sci-fi, and as someone who was raised by genre filmmaking, I have a particular knack for any film that does it well. Dune 2 doesn't just do it well, though, does it? It reaches an exclusively rare club of big-budget fanfares with deep literary merit, in a way that has you believe in the power of cinema itself. I mean, this is the best sci-fi film in the last 7 years, easily. Its only competition being yet another one of Denis Villeneuve's films. It's a timely story that chronicles the rise of fascism within our country, America I guess, my country, and it does so with brilliant expertise and modern reimagining. To tell you the truth, I'm shocked this movie isn't higher on my list, and if you caught me on a different day, it's probably as high as my number 1 film. It's covered in worthy performances and visual effects that aren't just cool, but scratch a different itch in your brain like when you're peering at art in an art museum. Without this film, I feel like this year would have been critically bad for mainstream cinema. Film fans are getting to a point where faith in what Hollywood can offer is at an all-time low, and without something like this, I can't imagine where we'd be. Number 4. I Saw the TV Glow. Films like this are why I'm sure the Oscars are a political award instead of an outright champion of cinema. They're preferential to longer-standing careers, and within the singular effort, they like to award lifetime achievements as well. I get that. I honestly do. Because of that, though, they're never going to award the films currently shaping the landscape of cinema, as is the case for I Saw the TV Glow. Never in my life have I seen a film so accurately describe the current landscape's consumption of media, how it relates to their sexual growth, and how isolating the world can feel. Not to mention the technical masterclass on display, the already iconic light scheme, magnificent blocking, and attention to detail. The performances by Justice Smith and Jack Haven are among the best I've ever watched, and the way in which they interact with the setting continues to plague me. I feel like this film had its time in the light, but it's almost forgotten about now. It's strange to me how it's not higher in people's lists at the end of the year. Number 3. Flow. I think it's a little sacrilegious to start this by talking about my love of animals because it's disrespectful to the actual quality of the film and how much the film itself goes beyond that. I'm gonna do it anyway though, cause I just love animals so very much. Also, it's not like I haven't talked at length about what this film has to offer. As someone who grew up with many pets around during my life, I've always had an attachment to discovering how they work psychologically, and I think the world's scientists have a point when they say the more we research animals, the smarter they become. This film does justice to the intelligence of animals, and while, of course, no group of animals can steer a boat such as this, but the interactions between them feel so incredibly well thought out and realistic. This feels like a film I could probably watch 100 times without getting bored. It's one I can show anyone and everyone. It has that kind of universality that brings people together. Films like that are incredibly rare, but they have the added bonus of attaching themselves to the good memories of watching with my friends and family. Number 2. Queer. I feel like it's easy to forget that Queer is a mid-budget film because its source material is so much closer to indie film sensibilities. That budget though allows it to be many aspects of cinema I love all at the same time. Its story is certainly progressive. I wouldn't say I haven't seen a gay relationship developed with such explicitity before, but still in the current climate making a story like this is a statement in itself, one that I treat with reverence. The film so thoroughly takes advantage of its budget though, with possibly some of the best production design I've ever seen, and performances to match the technical merit around it. It's not one of those films where you wonder where all the money went. The ceiling to all of Guadagnino's ideas was heightened because he had the resources to pull it off. It had one of the all-time great scores as well. It's one that'll probably stick with me forever. It's hard to say more about this movie. I mean, it has the most nominations of the year for a reason. It has the most wins of this year for a reason. It's more than a worthy film. Number 1. Challengers. You know, it's funny, I didn't come into this year as a super fan of Luca Guadagnino. Of course I thought he was great, I enjoyed Call Me By Your Name quite a bit, but I actually haven't seen Bones and All or Suspiria. I think A Bigger Splash is incredibly underrated though. This movie had a case of being in the right place at the right time, and I felt uniquely excited to watch it. First of all, I'm a huge tennis fan. My cousins growing up were serious tennis players, and so being with them I tangentially grew a love for it. I know Guadagnino wasn't entirely interested in the specifics, but because I've seen the power of what the sport can be, I had a natural disposition to what the film was going for. It also came out a month or two after I had just moved to Korea to teach English, and I was feeling seriously homesick that day, wondering what I was doing there, what my path was. It was playing at the CGV art house Park Chan-wook Theater, pretty much the only major indie theater in Seoul that played films in English from time to time. I was starved of a good movie, because for whatever reason I thought more of the Korean films would have options for English subtitles. Stupid American. The only English films playing in Korea were whatever studio slop was playing, like Despicable Me 4 or Beetlejuice. Anyway, I was homesick, starved of a good movie, and this one hit me like a ton of bricks. I was floored by the technical direction, by the screenplay, by the performances, by the score. Oh my god, the score was amazing. I would have loved the film without the circumstances, but with them it reminds me of a specific time in my life. I love this film, and like Flow, its rewatchability is endless. It also made me look back at my life and wonder if I'm gay, actually, and to what degree. I think any film that makes you question your sexuality is doing its job properly. So there you have it, my top 25 films of 2024. I probably should have gone with 24 since it's 2024. Maybe I'll do that the next couple of years. I'll make the list higher each year. I want to thank again each and every one of you guys that took the time to watch this video. I know it's coming out far later than I would have wanted, but I've never done a project like this, so every bit of it is a learning experience. There's so many great films that I missed that are worth talking about, so please, if I didn't mention something you loved, I would love to hear about it. I'm really excited about the upcoming year. This channel is here to stay, and there's so many exciting projects I have in store. I know this isn't considered one of the best years in film, but it's one that I think is interesting for seeing what the future filmmakers have to offer. Anyway, I've noticed a theme coming out of the messaging, two themes actually: sexual liberation and the coming wave of fascism. We have films like The Brutalist, The Apprentice, and Anora dissecting the natural cruelty of the American dream, Dune Part 2 and I'm Still Here warning about the dangers of a totalitarian state. Hell, even Flow centers around how to grip with the world falling apart around you. On the flip side, you have films like Queer and Baby Girl talking about the complicated nature of reaching sexual freedom. I Saw the TV Glow goes into that same issue as well. Even Nosferatu's about the weight of culture's puritanical mindset. This is to say, it seems like there's a clear message that art is sending to you, one that I implore you to heed. It's absolutely crucial to understand this. You can't come out of film this year without this mindset. Please, I'm begging you. Through the countless films I've seen this year, the message is this: you have to be gay before it's too late. The world is going to end.